Are you someone in your 40s or 50s who's overwhelmed with feelings of gloom and doom, stressed and depressed that life has not turned out the way you wanted? Do you live with regrets and feel like the past is controlling your future? If any of those ring true for you, maybe you're in the midst of what some may call a midlife crisis. And if so, know that you're not alone. Many people reach a point that they feel frustrated, that life has not turned out the way they envisioned or that they want, and they are fearful or afraid, tripping up on that word this morning, but they're afraid that that's all there is and that there's nothing to look forward to. The reality is that's not true. And that is a story we tell ourselves. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you some of the signs of what can identify a midlife crisis, how to move out of that, and to create a different path for yourself. If you really want to and believe that you can reinvent and revision your whole life and create a completely different path, one that is gratifying, satisfying, fulfilling, and joyful. So stick around because you are tuning in today to the Kreatrix Energy Show, a space that helps you get out of your head and into your heart and into your body so that you can create the impact you feel called to make. My name is Kat Moulton, and I'm your guide to help you remember who you really are and to remind you that nothing is more powerful than the light that you are. And Kreatrix Energy powers you to show up in your full brilliance, to stop living life the way you should live it, and start living and showing up how you feel called and inspired to do it. This show is about tapping into that power source, and create and manifest whatever it is that you desire. Today's episode is powered by the Krea coin. To learn more about this coin and the community around it, go to kreatrix.club. That's Kreatrix.club and get your first free token and become part of a community of soul-inspired paradigm shifters, conscious leaders, and healing catalysts who are learning to trust themselves, step into their visions, and create a more beautiful world. One of the things I'm fond of saying, if you've followed me for a while, is that the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself. We learn about ourselves through community. So if you're inspired or curious about this community, I invite you to check it out. And especially if when you're in this period of your life, this midlife where crisis feelings are overwhelming, it's a time that we can flip it and really develop this relationship with ourselves, with our inner wisdom, our inner knowing, with source energy, the universe, God, however you want to call it. And we can create powerful shifts to have a life that is more meaningful and more beautiful. And that ripple effect goes out into the world and creates a more beautiful world for everyone else. So let's start by defining what a midlife crisis is. I found this on the internet. Quote, says, some stressor or moment of tension that leads to concerns of over-aging, a loss of life purpose, or even a fear of death. Common triggers can include job loss, health concerns, a parent's death or illness, children moving out, maybe even children moving back in, or just that day-to-day overwhelm. The crisis period or condition may loosely occur from the ages of 45 to 64. A midlife crisis for a man can last about 3 to 10 years, and for a woman, about 2 to 5 years. A midlife crisis could be caused by aging itself, or in combination of aging with all these changes, these regrets, these responsibilities, career or work, or lack thereof in anyone's life. So we can step back and say that these things can happen at any time in our life, right? It's not necessarily unique to age, but what is unique to the midlife age is that a lot of these things can happen at the same time and feel very overwhelming because some of us have children, young children, middle children, and parents that we have to take care of. We go through a lot of job changes. There's just so much going on at this time of life, and it can really be joyful. But oftentimes, this crisis that we're talking about is the perfect storm of so many of these things happening together. I want to share with you 10 signs that you can look for. And when they overlap and intersect, it can cause this midlife crisis. There are more than 10, but here are some very common ones. 1, the person is in chronic pain. 2, lost their joy. 3, they feel bored or apathetic on a very regular basis. 4, the mind spins with regret. 5, they may consume too much food, alcohol, screen, or just stuff in general. 6, they feel lonely and disconnected. 7, they make impulsive actions. 8, they're overwhelmed and anxious, like there's no feeling, control, or circumstance. 9, they may feel invisible, like no one sees them no matter what they do and how much they give. And 10, they really start to do things that goes along with that impulsive action that are out of character for them as a reaction instead of taking mindful, inspired actions to shift. So like I said, there are more, but those are the common ones. A lot of anxiety and depression symptoms run throughout this. And some people call this a crisis, or even a dark night of the soul. This is when we talk about paradigm shifting in this show and unleashing your brilliance. We get to choose to shift it from crisis to dark night to a time of awakening or a time of opportunity. And this shift in perspective and mindset is really about choice. And we're going to get into that in the steps on how we shift and overcome this midlife crisis period. But when these difficult times or these perfect storms happen, they really can throw us out of sorts. And it is common in our culture that a lot of people feel this way, and we're shown to feel this way, and we're not always shown how to get out of it. So here's a couple of examples, that may be indicative that you're in this crisis period or, the perfect storm is hit. Maybe you've always wanted children and you did not have them, or you could not have them based on, either infertility or circumstances internally. You had trouble conceiving, or maybe you didn't have a partner. Maybe your partner was infertile, or things just didn't work out at the timetable that you envisioned. There's a lot of sadness and a lot of remorse and a lot of regret. So when we talk about how we shift out of these things later, we can look at options of choosing. Do I want to stay stuck in the negativity and focusing on the lack? Or do I want to create joy and a new pathway to look at it? Or maybe a different way to have children in my life? Another example for a lot of people focuses on career. There could be a lot of upset and frustration that the career or the life or the job path that you thought you were going to have didn't actually work out, and it didn't give you the lifestyle you wanted to have or bring. So how do we shift out of that? And how do we have that lifestyle and create the career path? Or how do we come to terms with it without beating ourselves up and creating a life that feels joyful regardless of the circumstance? And a lot of people feel these things, but then they become heightened and agitated when layoffs happen, when aging parents take our time, when other things go wrong, when our friends are calling on us because they're in strife or struggle and we don't know how to help them because we don't know how ourselves. So how do we shift out of all of this? And that's what I want to take a moment to do. We can dive deeper into all the things that go wrong or went wrong and the many other things that go along with it. And if you're sitting there watching, they're probably stirring inside you, write them down. But here's where we start to shift. There's 6 key things I want to cover. 1, take a real assessment of your life. And this is about beginning with awareness of what's going on and being very honest in this inventory of your life and really not getting into the emotions of how you feel about it, but just the facts of where you're at and realistically what it's like and what you can do to change this. So it's an awareness and an accountability and an acceptance. When we move deeper into step one, it's really just accepting what is instead of trying to change it right now. And a lot of times these in that step, above in the things, the signs of midlife crisis, when we are numbing ourselves with food, with shopping, with stuff, with alcohol, we just don't want to accept where we are. But it's in this acceptance and the awareness of it that can really bring a lot of freedom and free up a lot of energy to make a different choice. When I talk about the age, the midlife, the 40s and 50s, I think of F words, and I think of all the other F words that go along with being this, and not the one that you're thinking like, oh, F this, right? But the real F words, the fluidity, the flow, the freedom, the fun, the financial abundance, the things that really make us feel good and help us shift out of this woe is me or the mind. So the mind can be a beautiful, beautiful tool, but it can also be a minefield of chaos and disruption if we let it control us. So really this first step is about being honest with yourself, taking ownership, taking stock and inventory, but not beating yourself up. That's where we want to not be in the emotion of it. There's a time and a place to sit with the emotions, but let's just look at it from the outsider, the observer, the witness, and see what's really going on. And then focus on what did work, focus on the gratitude of the things that did work out, the things that do bring you joy, the things that are positive. So often the mind likes to focus on what's negative instead of the positive. And so really having gratitude for the things that worked out and help us be in this acceptance. So the second way we can begin to work ourselves out of this midlife crisis, if we want to call it, is to really get in touch with the body. And I created an acronym for body, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but this is not just our physical body. We want to build an awareness with a coach, a mentor, a journaling practice that can help us look at the emotional body, the energetic body, physical body, the etheric body. There's many more, but if we want to begin to master our energy, mindset, and emotions, we have to go back to the basics. And oftentimes that starts with the physical body and using the breath. I talk a lot about this in other episodes, and if you want the shortcut to it, just message me, but it's about the gems as a starting point to all this, and the gems stand for, if you follow me, you'll know, grounding, being really present, elimination, letting go of what we don't need, movement, moving our body. I want to expand those M's to include mindfulness and meditation. But the S is for sound, but also silence, discerning when we need silence and sound. And really build on those basics to know where our energy ends, where our energy begins, and how to use it and how to shift our energy so that we don't get caught up in the remorse and the regret when we go over that first step of, taking accountability. And we really can begin to look towards the future and be future focused while still being present. So I have a whole process around that. If you're interested, there's lots of past episodes. I talk about in the beginning on what is Kreatrix energy and also episodes on reinventing and revisioning. Check those out. It dives into it further. Or like I said, just message me. The third one is really to begin this process of revisioning your life and creating something new. And as mentioned, there's a lot of episodes on this that you can go back and look or message me about the mini process I have, the fire and ice process. It's a masterclass. And again, this is about going back to basics and getting into the curiosity, of when we come to that acceptance, how can we get curious about shifting it? How can we get curious about letting go and really curious on that knowing ourselves, that most important relationship we talked about, the one with ourselves? How do we enhance it and refine it? So that fire and ice process takes you into the question and answering and also helps you start the action steps, because without taking action, we can't really rinse and refine and know ourselves and know what we want and how do we get out of this midlife crisis. How do we really take stock in what it is that we want, and maybe not go back to that vision that we had that didn't come to fruition, but really recreating and creating a new vision for ourselves. So in that example that I used about having children or not actually having children, if that's what you wanted, how can we make peace with it? And the fire and ice process will help you make peace with where we're at, and how can we choose to be happy regardless, and maybe think of new ways that we can either adopt, mentor a child, bring a child into our life that maybe isn't ours, or raise one in a different way. It's about shifting the lens and looking at it and really making that peace. And the fourth step is about getting support, and that can really help us with the previous steps. This is a really huge thing that I can't stress enough for people. There are times to go through this journey alone. These dark nights of the soul, there are parts of it we just have to be in the ick alone. But in order to fully get out of it and get on the other side, we might need the right coach, a mentor, a therapist, or a group of people to be with us, a group support that if we're not ready to talk and build our confidence and courage up, we might hear or see things from someone else that sparks inspiration or shows us that we're not alone. It's really important to be around people who lift us up, who can help us see what is possible, who have been through the stuff that we've been through or something similar, and they act as guides, and we can get support. Community builds immunity. I talked about this in the last 2 episodes a little bit on the loneliness antidote. We do need community because we are relational beings, and sometimes we need someone else to shine some light on our blind spots, or give us those journaling prompts, or ask us those curious questions that we may not have come up with to shift the lens. So get support. I'm inviting you, if you don't feel supported in your life, supported by God or source or people or community, start to lean into at least one and let yourself build upon it from there. The 5th step of getting out of this midlife crisis and this overwhelm is choose. It's all about choice. And I am inviting you to look at your life and start to make choices or new choices. And this again is about that paradigm shifting, about shifting our perspective or the lens we see things that we've been through and getting out of our own way. We need to make decisions and then take action. But really in the choosing, and choosing a new way of being or choosing a different perspective is very empowering, because we're in that midlife crisis when all, the different elements of the perfect storm is on us. We can feel stuck. We can feel lost, and, we sit on the couch or we just mope along and we don't have the inspiration to do things differently, or we just can't see what's further down the path. So if you just make one little choice to do things differently, it can begin that ripple effect of seeing things in a different way, seeing what other options are that we can try to step into and make one new choice after another. So choice is really important. And the 6th one that goes along with that is trust. And this one I have struggled with the most out of any of them, in full transparency. We need to trust that things can change. We need to trust that there are different choices out there. We need to trust that there are better or different guides for us. Or if we've had a therapist that really sucked and didn't help us, we can trust that there is a new one meant for us waiting. It's about trusting in something greater than ourselves, trusting in an energy or a higher purpose, and that's why going back to basics is so important, because when we have trouble trusting, when we have trouble choosing, these back to basics where we ground our energy, that G, and we eliminate things, we eliminate the thoughts or the things or the stuff or the people that don't serve us. We create more space for trust. We create more space to have new choices show up and new things. Moving our body, and I can't, hammer this home enough. Movement is so important when we're stuck, and it can be anything, just taking a deep breath. When we breathe deep, our whole body actually moves with the breath. We want to, breathe from our stomach and expand. That alone can shift our energy. But, that basic stuff, that movement, walking, running, dance, yoga, playing a pickup game of softball. So this is something that entered back into my life. I played softball on a team last year one night, and it felt really fun. I was connected to new people. I was using my body again in a new way, or a way that I used years ago that I hadn't. And it just changed things up in my life. I wanted to play this year. And I put that intention out there, but I was hesitant to contact the person who coordinated it. And when the intention was out there, and we talk about this in other episodes, set the intention. My son and I were at the batting cages back in April, and I was just hitting the ball. He was really depressed, and I knew that movement and contact with something would shift his energy, and it did. But while we were there, this woman that I met one time walked by me, and she's like, "Hey, how are you? Are you playing on the team this summer?" And I was like, "Oh, I really want to." And I set the intention. So she invited me, and we switched contact information. But what I did was I took that inspired action, and set the intention. An opportunity showed up, and I emailed her. And then I reached out to the coordinator, and lo and behold, I'm on the team. I'm with a whole bunch of other people. I'm able to play and connect, and it's ushered in different types of movement, different ways of seeing things, and opportunities for my child to connect with other people, and help shift out of this midlife ickiness by just doing something fun. And who knows where it's going to lead, and it doesn't have to lead to anything else except the appreciation and enjoyment of it that fills me in other areas of my life. So trusting the process and trusting that these choices and these intentions that we set, and if you go into the fire and ice process, we talk a lot about intention, but just trusting that things can shift and remembering that life is fluid. It's a fluid process. So if we're feeling stuck and we're feeling in the overwhelm, the perfect storm of too many people pulling on our energy, the job responsibility, the job we just dislike, set the intention for something different and trust that it can happen, but really find support around it. And go back and listen to the replay of it, or check out some of the other replays that, I've had, again, about the reinvention, the revisioning, the loneliness antidote, things that you can do to help you feel less lonely. That can help the midlife crisis, and just learn more about it. And the one thing I always invite people to do is take the inspired action steps. We talk about intuition. So if something I've said or something someone else said, lights you up and you're like, "Ooh, I want to try that. I want to investigate that further." Take the action step and follow that breadcrumb, just like I did with the softball, and follow the breadcrumb, and someone's going to show up for you. Trust and have faith for that. And when they do, continue to follow the breadcrumbs and see where it leads, and rinse and refine and repeat, and come back here to this show, come back here to this network. There are so many women guiding other women. And I've talked about this before. There's shows on everything you can imagine, shows on grief and how to overcome grief if you've lost a loved one or things haven't worked out, shows on joy, how to embody your joy, shows on becoming more visible, how to make more money, how to utilize your money better. Anything you can imagine is on this network, on the Win-Win Global Movement. So I invite you to come back. If you like my style, if you connect with me, if I'm one of those people that you're like, "Ooh, I want to know more about her," then go to Kreatrix.club and connect with me, Kreatrix.club, or just go over to my website, katmoulton.com. It's Kat with a K, KATMOULTON, or stick around for the after party on this episode if you're watching live. If not, and you like to binge watch and you're sitting on the couch, binge watch some episodes and then reach out to me, DM me, connect with me. You can email me at katmoulton@katmoulton.com. But like I said, check out these other shows, or check out anything in your life that speaks to you, that you feel called to, that resonates with you. Take the action step from there. If you feel called to, like, "I really just need to breathe more and focus on my breathing," start with that. Journal more. Whatever is speaking to you, do it. Wake yourself up. That's what this is about. We didn't even touch on that in this episode. So next week, we're going to talk a lot more about waking up, feeling inspired, that shifting of the energy from midlife crisis to midlife opportunity. See these things as compost and lessons to create a more beautiful life for yourself and a more beautiful world for everyone. So Fiery Soul Sister, just remember, it's not a show, it's a movement to remind you that you are a powerful creatrix living in the matrix, and the world needs women who are fully awake, dangerously alive, and unified in heart and purpose. So from my heart to yours, may the energy of love flow through you and expand to create ways of pure, positive impact to help you move beyond this midlife crisis you might be feeling into midlife empowerment and a life of just unbelievable fulfillment. Humanity needs you to embody your light, your creatrix energy, so you can unlearn all that past programming, unlock your heart, and unleash your gifts. The world needs your beautiful gifts. Thank you so much for your time, presence, and energy today. Until next time, so much love.